Hello, Jamie from InkyandScrappy back again today with a Halloween make of 2022. This one features ink road stamps that Wednesday. It's at the time was the only Halloween stamp or Halloween related stamp that I owned from ink road stamps. My other set did come in now, but you know, this one was due to be in the mail by September 1st, so I had to use what I had on hand. I did get it in the mail by August 30th, so for me, that's a huge win. I'm horrid at mailing things out. It's how I roll. So for this one, I wanted to do something that was a little different. I'm not huge on the big black icon image in general, just because I like to color things and I like the color variation and those types of things. So I had to go out of my comfort zone with this one a little bit. So I decided to try some jellyfish ink and some ink on 3. I did do some watercoloring with them. I do not have any of that footage. I ended up using my Copic colored one, and I did use ink on 3's fade out ink to do this. Either the fade out ink or the jellyfish ink would have worked for this one. They were very similar in how the end results looked on the other ones. You will be seeing those Wednesday cards later on this season, I am sure. So I'm just starting with some neutral grays. These are my Hoo bullet nib markers. I'm just laying out the darkest spots and then coming in with the lighter ones and going from there. I will try to name colors for you as we go along and supplies. I did not write down anything, and this one happened over about a 6-day stretch. And I was kind of happy it happened over a longer period of time. It did not turn out how my original thought process was leading me on this one. And so I ended up pulling in more elements than I thought I would have pulled in, and I really love how it turned out. It was total mixed media by the end, and if I could have kept this one, I would have, but you know, it was a swap card. I can make another one, I guess. Maybe. I won't, but it's all a good thought, right? So I'm going in with the palest ones that I have. I think E50 and then E51. For my pale tones here. It might have been E51 and then like an E41 or 43. I don't remember. And then for her actual shirt, I wanted to extend it out just a little bit so it doesn't have that blunt, stark edge there. And with using that ink on 3 fade out ink, it was so easy to just extend that one out. And then I do come in with a fine liner, and I probably should have just done some selective stamping here because my least favorite thing about the whole card was how her eyes looked in the finished product. It's eyes to me, I can never draw them symmetrical. Eyes are supposed to be mostly symmetrical at least, but you know, it's a skill I need to work at. I did end up going around and doing some fine liner around her hands. I just couldn't get the look that I wanted with just the Copics, and so I did end up adding those in, and then gave the bottle some shape so it was easier to follow along there. And so my greens were a yellower green tone. I did pull in my Copics for those, and then for my purples, I just ended up figuring out which one was my darkest tone, and then I did bring in a bluish purple from Copics as well. And then for the actual bottle here, I'm going to go back in, and because I didn't remove the stamp from my Misty, I did this on purpose, I could go back in and stamp the label on the bottle selectively. So I did use the Lawn Fawn stamp chamois and it does clean off that stamp amazingly well, so you don't have any residual ink on parts that you don't want. But that allowed me to selectively stamp in that label with the skeleton and the word poison. I just couldn't see it well enough after it was colored to get it on there without doing it that way, if that makes sense. And then I'm just going to go back in and touch up the rest of this. I wanted to darken it up a little bit. And then she does have some dot detail in the stamp. And so I wanted to add in that dot detail a little bit more. So I came back in with that fine liner and just added some dot detail to her outfit. And then wherever else I felt it needed some more definition. And I think once I outlined that bottle and the hand, I thought the rest of it kind of needed a little bit more definition to it. So this was a way for me to get the look of a stamp that was a solid stamp, but not the solid stamp look, if that makes sense. So you can get that outline look. So there is the comparison between the two, if you were curious. And then I did cut these all out. They are sitting on my desk. And so I was trying to figure out how to finish off her top. And it was one of those, you know, I didn't know where I wanted. I thought about putting her behind a brick wall, but I wasn't positive I wanted to do that. And so then I thought, you know, her mother had the thing with black roses. And so I thought, well, Wednesday could have some black flower petals. So I did ink some black flower petals up with black soot spray stain and then the mica, the distress mica stain in Empty Tomb. So they are gloriously black and glittery. Oh, they were so pretty when they were dry. I did end up adding that brick detail to the bottom of this one. So I used Tim Holtz's 3D brick folder and then colored that in with some distress oxides in hickory smoke, forest moss. I did bring in some pumice stone or some frayed burlap. I think it was frayed burlap. I wanted a little bit of a yellowing to that mortar, so I brought in a very small shading brush. And then I added in a little bit more finer detail with that green. And then I added some water spritz. And then, of course, I did go in with some black soot to darken that up a little bit, as it was fairly light and I wanted it to kind of have that darker Halloween grungy look to it. So for my drips, I used the Tim Holtz drip die. Yes, it is discontinued. I think it was a Halloween release a few years back. I'm not for certain. I did go over it with some peeled paint and forest moss, and then I came in with a little bit of black soot. I probably wouldn't have had to do the black soot. And in hindsight, if I wanted it to be a little bit greener in the final product, I probably should have started with a white piece or a gray piece of paper for the drip. It does have a green sheen to it when it was all said and done. You just can't really tell it in pictures very well. So when you catch the angle just right, you can definitely see the green. I think I catch it in one of the photos or the video below. And then I am going in with that ultra thick embossing powder. I'm just adding that to make sure that it has that drippy, goodness. This one did end up being all the mixed media things. I absolutely love how it turned out. So I'm going to trim that down, and then to add this to the brick, I'm just going to use some liquid glue and then hold it down with those acrylic blocks. The issue with those 3D embossing folders is getting stuff to stick to them, or, in general, because they do have all of the raised edges, so sometimes there's very little surface area that actually sticks to your other one. And my background piece definitely had that embossing powder and that texture on it as well. So to finish up the bottom of Wednesday, I'm adding in those black flowers that I did. I just used some paper flowers from my stash to color. You could use I think Tim Holtz, the flowers that you can color with distress are still out there, but any paper flower would work to do that with. And then for the flower centers, I'm going to go in with some purple, just some tiny purple gems, nothing too special. These ones came with another one of the Crystal Katana wands, or Crystal Katana type wands from Amazon. It was my only Prime Day purchase. And then I'm just going to trim off the edge of that drip and then secure anything that didn't maybe stick down very well the first time. And then, you know, I'm so patient. You see how long it sat underneath the block, right? Yeah. So to get my piece to sit down, I am using a piece of double-sided adhesive. It's one of the huge ones. It's kind of like score tape, but it's a different brand. I picked it up on Joann's. I think I used a 40% off, so it was like $17 for the huge roll of it. And then I needed to figure out a sentiment for this one. I had multiple options, and I really didn't know which one I wanted to use. And I never plan out my sentiments. It's how I roll. But I wanted something, you know, Halloweenish, I guess you could say. But technically this card could be used for any occasion. Well, maybe not any occasion. It's not particularly Halloweenish. So the black cardstock I used was the leftover piece of black alcohol cardstock from Ranger that I had. It's a definite heavy, dull black. Like, I don't know. It's super expensive, but it's super nice. It's probably my new favorite black cardstock for sentiment. I probably won't be using it a whole lot though, but it was sitting on my desk, so that's what I ended up using for this one. And I'm just using an olive green embossing powder from Close to My Heart. It's what I have on hand. I didn't want to do white. I just thought white was going to be too white, and of course it's on black, so the lighter olive was a nice color, and it pulls in that olive color from the bottle, or that greenish tone from the bottle. And then I'm just using up some of my foam adhesive that I had for my upcoming class, all the scraps. So I'm going to pop up Wednesday for this one. And then for that sentiment, I ended up going above her head. It would have looked fine below as well. I just felt that there was enough visual interest on the bottom with the drips and the brick, and I didn't want to cover up that gorgeous brick. Not that covering up the gorgeous purple skulls was, you know, it was equally. I could have gone without a sentiment on this one because, you know, it was pretty without it. So I'll stop wearing black when they make a darker color, as I'm currently fully dressed in black. Yes, I agree with that sentiment. I'm bringing in the little spider and the little spider. It's not the web, it's the webbing that comes down, whatever. From Tim Holtz's, I think it's Creepy Things, or it was a Halloween release from couple years ago. It is still available at Joann.com, and I think Scrapbook.com still has some as well. It's a nice, versatile Halloween set. And I was just double checking to see how the Black Widow spider looked, like the markings on it, because I wanted to match it. So I'm going to pull them up on my phone here. And then I just use that as a guide for adding in that pattern. And I ended up taking out my Dilutions paint pens. So it's that, I think it's like an acrylic paint pen. And then those took a while to dry, so I did set them aside. And yes, you should probably put your gems away before you spill them. So for the inside of my card, I'm using a gray card base here. I just added one of the other sentiments. And then for the back of my card, I do stamp. I have a custom made stamp for the back of my cards, but I wanted to put the Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid from that Wednesday stamp set on the back as well. So then my other sentiment goes, or my other piece of personally made for you by Jamie Schlungen goes underneath that one. And then for the inside, I'm going to add Wednesday in some gray. I think I use Hickory Smoke ink in an oxide. If you're going to stamp with distress inks, oxides are the way to go. They give you a much better, crisper image. Distress inks really are for mixed media and playing with painting, making. They're not so much for stamping, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to use that adhesive roll again to attach this to my card front. And then to fill in the little scrap, I'm just going to use some Scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive. And then I will just start peeling that back so I can line it up first to make sure that I have it all in place. And I could have done glue, but I wanted to go with a super heavy duty adhesive to make sure that it stuck. And then of course, I'm going to bring in some glossy accents I just do the bottle that would be showing because the label's not going to be glossy. It's going to be flat more than likely. And then I did add some gloss to that spider body. And there you get an image of, it does have a green sheen to that drip. I love how it turned out. So have a good one. That is my Wednesday Halloween card featuring ink road stamps. And this one took 2 days to voice over. So if I repeated myself, I'm so sorry. Please keep getting inky and take care.